So how good is Mr. Miyagi as a sensei, a karate coach, karate trainer, whatever term you want to use? It's a difficult one because it's hard to judge him because he's only had one student, and that was Daniel. Well, he had two actually. If you actually watched the next Karate Kid, he had a female student. But from what I recall from that movie, it's a long time since I saw the next Karate Kid, but from what I recall, her character, she never competed in any tournaments, but she learned some good skills that she was able to implement. So Mr. Miyagi is a solid trainer, a good trainer, and we saw what he did with Daniel-san, and he got Daniel to win the All Valley tournament. Bearing in mind he only had a few months experience, beating guys like Johnny and many guys from Cobra Kai who had way more experience than him. See, that shows how good of a trainer he was. But at the same time, it's hard to judge someone that only had one student. What if was Daniel just the perfect student for him? Like, would his strategies have worked if he trained somebody else, such as, let's say he trained Miguel in Cobra Kai? Would his strategies have worked? Or Hawk, or anyone else in Cobra? I don't know. That's why I posed this question. Even I'm not sure. But one criticism that I want to give of Mr. Miyagi though is that why is it that although don't get twisted, he did a great job with making Daniel into a champion, as we saw in the All Valleys, but why is it that years after we saw Daniel struggle with Mike Barnes, for example? He couldn't even defend himself against Mike Barnes. You would think someone who was an All Valley champion, defeated Johnny Lawrence, who was the best guy from Cobra Kai, would be able to defend himself against Mike Barnes. Even if Mike Barnes, let's say, he's better than him, you would think that he would put up a fight at least. He barely put up a fight against Mike. He was so scared of him. And the Chosen as well, I think he did end up defeating Chosen. But one criticism that I want to give of Mr. Miyagi is that with Daniel though, why is it that with Daniel, although Daniel became an All Valley champion, defeating Johnny Lawrence, who was the best fighter from Cobra Kai, why was he still extremely scared to fight after that? You'd think that after all the fights he had in the All Valley tournament, that he would become at least somewhat confident in his fighting ability, and you'd think that he'd be able to defend himself against pretty much anyone that knows karate, or against most people that know karate. But he couldn't defend himself against Mike Barnes. Mike Barnes beat the living daylights out of him. And I think in the tournament he ended up defeating Mike Barnes, but that's only because Mike Barnes lost 2 points through breaking the rules. If Mike Barnes didn't do that, he would have won easily. Mike Barnes was clearly the better fighter out of the two, out of him, and between Mike and Daniel, Mike Barnes was clearly the better fighter, and Daniel was scared of him. There were times where Mike Barnes beat Daniel up, for example. Like, it was just too easy for Mike, and Daniel was just so scared of him. Why is that? This guy who's a champion, being trained by Mr. Miyagi, why is he still scared? Why can't he defend himself against Mike? Even if Mike is the better fighter, let's say, you would think that Daniel should at least be able to put up a good solid fight. He wasn't even able to do that. And Chosen, for example, with Chosen, I think he did end up defeating Chosen in the end, but again, he was scared to death of Chosen. So it makes me think, is Mr. Miyagi very good at teaching the psychology of fighting and making his fighter confident, making his fighter believe in his ability? I don't know. I doubt it, because Daniel was always a scared fighter. Obviously, you could put that down to Daniel. You could say that maybe that's just Daniel. Maybe we have a different fighter. If you put a different fighter in that situation with the same level of talent and experience as Daniel, they could be a lot more confident. So maybe it's just Daniel's psychology, whereby he's just someone that innately just lacks confidence. That's a possibility. That's fair. But at the same time, I'm not sure on that though. I think it might come down to Mr. Miyagi's ability to instill confidence in his fighter, in fighting. His ability to instill confidence in his fighters. I think it's underdeveloped. I genuinely think it's underdeveloped. I think in terms of teaching the technical ability, he's very good. He's very good at that. But in teaching the psychological side of fighting, and the confidence, the aggression as well, I don't think he's very good at teaching that. Because Mr Miyagi does teach never strike first and all that stuff. What about always show mercy, never strike first? And I think in a lot of instances that can be detrimental, and we saw that with Daniel. Whereas I feel like a bit more, maybe a slightly more aggressive approach would have been more beneficial for someone like Daniel. And yeah, like that's just what I'm thinking. I think Mr Miyagi, overall as a trainer, I'd have to say I think he's a bit overrated, because a lot of people say, oh, he's a great trainer. They say he was amazing. Daniel talks about him, says he was amazing, and I think he was a good trainer, a very good trainer. But when I say overrated, that's not me saying he was bad. Overrated doesn't necessarily mean bad. It can mean bad in some instances, but not in this case. I'm not saying he's a bad trainer, Miyagi. I'm saying he's overrated, but at the same time, he's very good. Like, those two statements are not mutually exclusive. They can coincide. So essentially, that's what I'm trying to say. Mr Miyagi, in summary, very good at teaching the technical aspects of fighting, at getting you, very good at teaching defense as well, especially when it comes to defense. Very good at teaching defense, counter punching, that kind of style. Very good at teaching that. But when it comes to instilling aggression in his fighters, he's not the best, and aggression is needed sometimes. I don't agree with the whole Miyagi-Do ethos that aggression is always bad, never be angry in fighting, never be aggressive, always fight, always never throw the first punch. I don't agree with that whole ethos. I don't agree with that. In some instances it's good, but in a lot of instances it's not great. So I don't agree with that entire ethos. And anyway, going back to Mr Miyagi, like I said, I don't think that he's very good at instilling confidence as well in his fighters, because we saw Daniel struggle with confidence pretty much throughout the entire Karate Kid. He was never at any point in it. Obviously now in Cobra Kai is a lot more confident in fighting, but at that stage, even after he was a champion, he was never supremely confident in his ability. Unlike, you look at the Cobra Kai fighters, they were way more confident. So even the ones that Daniel beat. So this is why I say instilling that high level of confidence in his fighters, that's a weakness of Mr Miyagi, in my opinion. But anyway, that's it for this video, guys. If you disagree with what I'm saying, put in the comment section, what do you think of Mr Miyagi as a trainer, as a sensei? And yeah, we can have some discourse in the comments. And if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, all of that stuff. And until next time.